Our first reading this morning is an excerpt from a poem called Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then, it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I that you have been looking for. It is you that I have been looking for." And then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
Our scripture reading, Acts 2, 1-21, turned into a story. What's that noise?
The disciples sat quietly, not really knowing what to say or do. They were in Jerusalem, surrounded by hundreds of people from all over the world who came to Jerusalem to celebrate the festival of gratitude for a new harvest, a time to remember the gift of the Holy Scriptures which guided their lives. But they were not happy. They didn't know where they were going.
They had so enjoyed being followers of Jesus, hearing his parables, eating the fish he cooked on the beach for them, teaching them how to be peacemakers in troubled times. But now it was as though Jesus had abandoned them. The Romans had killed him, but then Jesus came back to them in new ways of sharing bread and love. But then he told them that he had to leave them again for their own good. Now they felt very, very alone. As they were sitting there, confused and lost, a huge sound swept over them all.
They couldn't really describe it. Years later, one of them would say it was like a great wind. Another would say it was like a fire. Whatever it was, it filled them with energy, and they felt alive. Alive in the very same way Jesus had made them feel.
The disciples began listening to all the people around them, looking and speaking differently than they did. But somehow the disciples understood these and saw them no longer as strangers. They knew they weren't alone, that somehow the Spirit that blessed Jesus at his baptism was now blessing them. Some of those people saw the disciples laughing and hugging each other and being all excited. They'd been drinking, someone in the crowd said.
Peter stood up. He seemed so excited. It was almost as if he were glowing. He looked at the crowd who had gathered. "Friends, we're not drunk. Good heavens, it's early morning. No, we're under the influence of something much better. The Spirit that begins and blesses all creation." This is what the prophet Joel was talking about many years ago.
One of these days, Joel said, the Creator will pour out the Spirit on everyone, young, old, men, women, boys, girls, everyone. People will find ways to understand each other and to get along and to be filled with hopes and dreams. And everyone is invited to the festival, where we enjoy the harvest of love for one another and all creation.
Thank you. Language. I say that word, and immediately you know what I mean. You're wondering why I'm saying just the word language? which is another sense of knowing what it means. You not only know what it means, you've got a whole bunch of trajectories projected out. Where might Alan be going with that word language? And it's just sounds. Language. I mean, if we really started to say it, it would sound strange in our mouths. Language. And how did it come? How did it come to pass in human evolution that in this culture I could say language and you know exactly what I mean? I mean, let's go back a few millennia. Pre-Magnum and pre-Crustacean and whatever those eras are. Before, when we only had the surprise of fire and whatever we did, trees and caves, and our word choices were not much more. Laughter, melody, language. It's so incredible. Such an amazing creation of humanity that we can take these nuances of sound and they can have direct meanings, they can have metaphorical meanings, and we can be together in language. And we can be apart if we're not speaking the same language. One of the stories, the meanings of this day, Pentecost Sunday, is that people who were separated by language no longer felt that separation any longer. They somehow understood each other. What had separated them now in this moment in Jerusalem where the Spirit is holding them all together, they can be heard, they can be listened to, they can be understood. Because of the Spirit, a deep sense of being human beings together. Language. Let me say a few words to you. There's so many directions I could go right now. It's so fun not having to text. But I was in North Carolina last week. North Carolina is making the news for the wrong reasons. Let me say a few words to you. Heterosexual, homosexual, gay, straight, ally. Those words, when I was younger, those words had a lot of charge for me. And at another point, they had a lot of confusion for me. And now I say them, and they're just descriptors. They're simply descriptors for human being. And yet those words can be another source of separation between human beings. Right now, up in Portland, Oregon, there's an international meeting of the United Methodist Church. And they are still in that place of having great struggle and dissension and anger and misunderstanding around those words, homosexual, heterosexual, transgender. They have not gotten there yet as a denomination where we have become in the United Church of Christ. Our own Reverend Matthew Pearson, minister of our Methodist Church, locally they got this great news that today, this very day, they as a congregation are voting to become what's called a reconciling congregation, which individual churches in the United Methodist Church are able to do, and it's close to our Open and Affirming. They as a congregation are doing that. Reverend Matthew and 110 others of the Methodist Church, before this conference began up in Portland, came out as gay or lesbian. Very brave act for them, because that can make them get kicked out of the church if they follow the rules of the church right now. Language. Connected to understandings that we have, that we've been taught, that we've been acculturated with. How do we let that change in us? Speaking personally, for me, it's getting to know people. It's meeting people. It's finding that what I thought was strange isn't strange at all. What I thought was different is actually very similar, very, very the same experience of being a human being. Fundamentally so. And that's part of what was happening in this moment, in this movement. From something that was based in a particular culture is now about to break its boundaries and be more inclusive. Make the circle be a wider circle. We are not separated by language. We're not separated by gender or sexual orientation or country or land or wealth or ability. We are humans being human together. Another interesting thing for me that I learned or remembered, maybe I knew it once, the history of Pentecost. It's a Jewish festival, it's a Jewish harvest festival. 50 days after the Passover. The celebration of springtime, of freedom, of the end of winter, the beginning of spring. What do? You plant your seeds. What happens 50 days later? The harvest comes. It's a time to celebrate the harvest. It's time to celebrate the gift of the land. And over a few centuries of Jewish history, they also became talking about the Torah, the scriptures, as another gift to the culture. And so on this day, the festival of the weeks, or Sukkot, you celebrate the harvest, you celebrate the teaching of the Torah. It's a blessed day. Our own people, our own first Christians, trying to make a story out of this, took that symbol of harvest and scripture and land and said, this is the day we'll remember as when there was Jesus and the disciples, and now there's us. And we are Christ's body. We are the embodiment of love. We are the embodiment of healing. And we are the embodiment of kindness. Kindness. In these times that we're living in where there is so much fear, kindness becomes a radical act. Kindness becomes something that can break the fear and the difference and the argument, the not knowing one another. Kindness can be a revolutionary act in these days. And it reminded me of something that I learned from the writer named Josephus. Josephus wrote at the same time that the Gospels were being written, Jewish historian. He wrote a book called The Jewish Antiquities, which told the story of everything up to that moment in time, including Jesus got a couple paragraphs in his book. And in this book, Josephus wrote, he says, about this time there lived Jesus, a wise man. For he was one who wrought surprising feats and was a teacher of such people as accept the truth gladly. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. When Pilate, upon hearing him accused by men of the highest standing among us, had condemned him to be crucified, those who had come in the first place to love him, to love Jesus, did not give up their affection for him. And the tribe of Christians, so called after him, has still to this day not disappeared. Those who had in the first place come to love him did not give up their affection for him, did not give up their love for him, and still to this day have not disappeared. My friends, we know we are living in really troubling times that can scare us right to our very bones and heart and muscle. I want to invite us to remember that affection for someone like Jesus, kindness towards one another, can be an act that reminds us, that remembers us, human being to human being, with different languages, with different ways of expressing our sexuality, but still being humans, being together. Let's be the tribe that's known for our kindness. Even when we're engaged in social change and turning over the tables, even when we can stand up to someone who is taken off the tops of mountains in Virginia, even when we can stand up against racism and fear of the stranger, we can still do that with an attitude that is at heart a loving attitude, a kind attitude, the one that we've been given to follow through the teachings and the love and the healings of Jesus. Let us be kind to one another. Let the people say, Amen.